What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 83 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, June 16, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malin. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the world of baseball, as both New York teams were in action this week. And let's start things off with the New York Mets, who are coming off a very nice series against the Colorado Rockies last weekend. Then they go into a divisional matchup against the Washington Nationals, and the Mets end up sweeping the Nats in 3 games, and they really relied on their pitching, which was really strong throughout in that series. A 5-4 win in extras in the 10th on Tuesday, and it was a bit of a close one, but then they really controlled things. David Peterson with a complete game shutout for the New York Mets on Wednesday, and they win that one 5-0. Then you go into Thursday's game, and it was pretty much all Mets throughout that one until it got to the 9th inning, and it got a little crazy from there. But Edwin Diaz comes in to lock things down and gets his 15th save of the year. The Mets end up losing Kodai Senga in that game. He goes out and onto the 15-day IL with a hamstring problem, and that's really a hurtful one for the New York Mets, who have been really reliant on Senga to be their ace, while Sean Manaea is still out with injury this season. And Senga's done a phenomenal job, 7-3 on the year, and he ends up getting credited with the win in that game, a 4-3 win for the Mets, but they lose him for just a little while. I think it's going to end up being the end of July into August that you're going to see Kodai Senga again. I don't think they're going to rush him back or try to rush him back before the All-Star break hits, but you never know. And with those hamstring problems for pitchers, they are very, very risky. So you do not want to risk a pitcher like Senga in the month of June or July when you need him in the later months of September and October. So Senga goes out, but the Mets still win, and you're feeling pretty good if you're a Mets fan. 6-0 in their last 6 games. They are on that 6-game winning streak, and then you head into a weekend series at home at Citi Field before you get into some divisional matchups, and you're thinking positive, and it really all went downhill from there as they welcome the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Rays take it to the New York Mets this weekend. A 3-game sweep, first time this season that the Mets were swept. And then you look at the runs that they let up in these games. 7-5, they lose it on Friday. And a credit to Clay Holmes, who had a good 5 innings, but then the bullpen came in and completely blew things up. Paul Blackburn had his worst outing in a couple of years, you would say. Then you go to Max Kranick, and he gets credited with the loss. Blackburn let up 4 runs, and then Kranick let up the last 2, and the Mets lose that one. They can't come back from it. They lose it 7-5. Then you go to Saturday, where the Rays come in with Rasmussen on the mound against McGill, and McGill, who just has not been the same pitcher in the last couple of months than he was in the month of April. Very, very strong to start this season, and now you're questioning whether he still should be a starter for this Mets team. And in that Mets rotation, he lets up 6 runs, 3 of them earned, and the Mets lose Saturday 8-4. Just not a good game for New York overall. And you're thinking, all right, just grab one, bounce back on Sunday, and then you head into the divisional matchups against the Braves and the Phillies next week. And it was just anything but, as Griffin Canning comes out, and 3 of the last 4 starts have been woeful for Griffin Canning, who had a great start to the season. Looked like he was maybe the second best Mets pitcher behind Kodai Senga. And then it's just been all downhill in the month of May for him and into June. Just not good enough right now for Griffin Canning. Ended up having that one start against the Dodgers in early June that he went 6 innings strong, 3 hits allowed, no earned runs. And that was at Dodger Stadium, and he ends up getting the win in that one. Since then, it's just been pretty bad, and he's had 4 earned runs allowed against the Nats on Tuesday. Then he had 6 earned runs in this one against Tampa Bay, and before that, he did not have a great outing to end the month of May against the Chicago White Sox. Only went 3 innings in that one, and then he even got pulled in the start previous to that in just 2 2/3. Yes, that one was due to a rain delay, but even so, he had let up 3 runs and 3 earned runs in that game to Los Angeles. So really 4 of the last 5, you have not seen the same pitcher in Griffin Canning, and that's something that the Mets are going to need to work on. You did expect that when the Mets grabbed Griffin Canning that there would be some growing pains. And yes, the pitching lab is doing a great job. Jeremy Hefner, David Stearns, they know what they're doing with these guys that they're bringing in. However, there are going to be bumps in the road. That's a baseball season for you. And Griffin Canning's going through it right now in the month of June. So he has to step up, and the Mets really need him to step up, especially in the absence of Manaea right now, as well as Kodai Senga now to the injured list. But they lose this game 9-0, and this one was not even close. The Rays offense was really strong. 9 hits, 9 runs. The Mets only had 5 hits in this game with no runs. And really, it's the big thing of the Mets star players did not step up. Pete Alonso had a rough series in this one. Juan Soto did not do much. Then you had Francisco Lindor, who's pretty non-existent for the Mets in this series. And that's really the problem. The Mets don't have that deep of a lineup in my mind. I think they need maybe a bat or two, probably a big bat at the deadline. If they could try and get one, we'll see who's available. That would really take this team to the next level because they're relying on some other guys that are very good defensively, not so great offensively. You got a lot of guys with averages in the low 200s, and you also have guys that you had high expectations for coming into the season who haven't really stepped up just yet. And one of those guys is Francisco Alvarez. You're waiting for the power to come from Alvarez at the bottom of that lineup. It would completely change the dynamic of this Mets lineup, and you just have not got it yet. And really, when you look at the rest of the guys, Tyrone Taylor is struggling so far this season. Luis Angel Acuna is great late in games as a pinch runner, but his average is not really where you want it to be. And Brett Baty had a good stretch here and there, but it seems like it's going a little more up and down than you would have expected since he was called back up from AAA at the beginning of the month of May. And Ronnie Mauricio himself comes back, and you're expecting maybe he has a big impact on the bottom of this Mets lineup. He's only batting 206 so far this season. The only one that's really stepped up other than the top of the order seems to be Jeff McNeil, and he's been really, really strong. And obviously in this series, he really came back to earth, and that wasn't a great sign if you are a Mets fan. You saw him against Washington. You saw him against Colorado. He was a different player, and really that's a worrying sign just a bit for the Mets, and that's something that they may have to focus on as the trade deadline comes up in the month of July. So we'll see what happens, but now the Mets go into some really tough division series, and I think the worrying sign for Met fans is that they hadn't been playing this bad, and they hadn't had a series like that all season long. They gave up 24 runs in 3 games. That is the most since a series against the Braves back in 2023. And now they go against the Braves when their pitching is just a little iffy. And the Braves on the other side have been woeful so far this season. 31-39, not the season start that the Braves expected, really anybody would have expected from Atlanta, a team that was in the postseason a season ago. Yes, it's still early, but the Braves need to start racking up wins to really get back in the division race and into the wild card race. And that's in a tough National League. But when you're on the Mets side, you're thinking, all right, well, we should handle things here if the Braves are playing that bad. But you think back to the history of the Mets and the Braves, and down in Atlanta, it has not been a kind ballpark, Truist Park, for the New York Mets. I know the dramatics of late last season, but other than that, the Mets have really struggled down in Atlanta, and they now have to go up against the Braves, and the Braves have something to prove here. And the Mets are coming off their worst series of the season, so they look towards this series starting tomorrow night, a 7:15 start. It's going to be David Peterson on the mound for the New York Mets, and he's been phenomenal recently. I talked about the complete game shutout a week ago. He goes up against Spencer Schwellenbach for the Braves, and Schwellenbach's been pretty strong this year, even with the Braves' flaws of their pitching. 5-4, 3.11 ERA for Schwellenbach, and then you have Peterson on the other side, 2.49 ERA, and that's one of the best in the National League with a 5-2 record so far this season. Very consistent, and he's looked really good, and the Mets need him badly after such a poor performance in a series against the Rays last week. And then you look at the next series, and we'll talk about this one on Thursday's episode, but they go against Philadelphia, and they're on the road, back-to-back series, Braves and Phillies. And this one really is going to prove where the Mets really stand right now. I know they have a lot of cushion in the National League right now in terms of the wild card race. Not as much cushion anymore in the race for the NL East, as the Phillies really caught up to the Mets after a series sweep that they had over the Blue Jays. But now we're really seeing the Mets in the thick of things. If they're dealing with some adversity, dealing with some injuries to that pitching staff, how are they going to bounce back from that? And they have a very tough test against the Braves and the Phillies with 10 games against both. 7 against the Braves, as well as 3 against the Phillies in the next 10 days or so. And it should be interesting to see how the Mets do in those. And we'll talk about them, like I said, on Thursday's episode. But let's move things to the other side of New York and up in the Bronx. The New York Yankees are also on the wrong side of a series sweep. They end up sweeping the Kansas City Royals last week, and you're feeling positive. And the rematch of the ALDS from a season ago, Yankees pitching looks strong. You got a great outing out of Max Fried, a solid one out of Clark Schmidt. And then you even get a 1-0 win, which the Yankees were very happy about. And that one was with Will Warren on the mound, who had a solid enough outing that they end up closing out the win. And it was tied at 0 until Goldschmidt reached on an infield single. They end up scoring on an error, and Pablo Reyes gets the winning run. Mark Leiter gets the win. Devin Williams with the save. And look at that. The Yankees sweep the Royals. So you're feeling pretty positive. And then you head to Boston. And we know recently the Red Sox have kind of had the Yankees number just a bit. And it's been a bit of a tougher series for New York. And that was proven once again as the Yankees get swept 3-0 against their rival Red Sox up at Fenway Park. And really the story of the weekend was how atrocious the New York Yankees offense was. They were not good in any aspect on the bases, hitting wise, home run wise. They did nothing to really give you confidence, and they wasted, I think, 3 pretty good outings from their starters. When you look at overall, the Yankees lose 2-1 in extras after Ryan Yarbrough only gives up a run, and you'll take that in 4 2/3. Garrett Crochet, the Yankees end up tying the game on Aaron Judge's solo home run over the monster in the 9th inning, and a lot of drama there. You're thinking, well, all right, well, the Yankees better close this thing out. But they fail once again. I feel like it's a repeating thing for the New York Yankees. They failed to score a run in the 10th inning with the ghost runner, really struggling to do so in extras this season. And then they end up losing it. Tim Hill leaves one for Carlos Narvaez, who has been a bit of a Yankee killer in the last week or so, going back to the last series as well last weekend at Yankee Stadium. He closes things out at a 2-1 Red Sox win in 10. And then you have a nice outing again from Carlos Rodon. Yeah, maybe not his best stuff. He gives up 3 earned runs. However, he gives you 5 innings and enough that this Yankees offense, if they wake up, they're all of a sudden in a nice hunt and getting going. And they were just anything but. Once again, Hunter Dobbins, who the Yankees looked to beat up on in the previous start at Yankee Stadium a week ago, he ends up getting a very nice outing again. And he only allows 2 hits, no earned runs, 6 innings pitched with 5 strikeouts. Yankees didn't get their offense till the 7th and the 9th inning. They lose that one 4-3. And another wasted outing, you would say, by a Yankees starting pitcher. And then you finish things off on Sunday. Your ace on the mound, Max Fried's been really strong. Yes, he gives up 2 runs in this game, 2 earned runs, and 6 hits allowed, but they did nothing on the offensive side of things. Only 5 hits in this game, and Brian Bayo really shut the Yankees down for 7 innings. Only 3 hits allowed from him and 8 strikeouts. The Yankees offense, they had some base running mistakes, and I can't think too much into those base running mistakes. Yes, it's concerning based on when you look at last year, and the Yankees had some problems there, but I don't think it's going to be an ongoing concern month after month after month and game after game for this Yankees team. It just happens, and it's a bad series when it comes to that. You had 3 young players, Dominguez, you had Volpe, you had Ben Rice. They all struggled on the base pass. this week, and that was really the storybook ending for the Yankees in a really bad series for the offense. But you really look at this Yankees team and say, yeah, it's just another bad series. And yes, the Rays are closing in now after they swept the Mets. They are 3.5 games back in the AL East. I'm not worried just yet about the division or anything like that. I do think the Yankees offense, though, needs a little bit of a refresher. And really, I think that the best possible thing could happen for this Yankees team is they go up against a rough pitching staff on the other side and get things going on their home field back at Yankee Stadium. And lucky for the Yankees, that's exactly what they get. They have 7 days now in a row where they have games at Yankee Stadium, and they're going up against two teams in the Los Angeles Angels and the Baltimore Orioles that have both struggled mightily when it comes to their pitching. And let's start things off with the Angels series as the Yankees take on the Angels. This one starts tonight. It's a 7:05 start in the Bronx. Jose Soriano, 4-5 this season, a 3.86 ERA, and Clark Schmidt on the mound for the Yankees, 3-3 this year with a 3.60 ERA. Yankees should win this one. They do get Giancarlo Stanton back from the 60-day IL, most likely going to start and be in the lineup for this one for the Yankees, and that's a real positive sign for New York just when you think their offense needs a little bit of boost. I don't think Stanton's going to come back and just be firing on all cylinders like he was in the postseason. However, a power bat like they would get in Giancarlo Stanton really adds to this lineup. They don't have to rely on too many hitters to really hope for. All they're hoping for is just to get on base. And really, they get Giancarlo Stanton back, who gives them a lot of power and some extra base hits. So that's a real positive sign for New York. Not freaking out really after this series sweep. It is still early. It is June, and that's baseball for you. It's 162 games, and the Yankees offense really needs to bounce back after this one. So we'll see what happens. If it becomes a factor, the Yankees offense starts to struggle in the next couple of days and months, then you're really worrying about it. But right now, just a bad series on the diamond, and they go up against an LA Angels team that is looking for a win at 33-37 in the AL West. So we'll see what happens as the Yankees end up taking on the Angels. And when you were thinking it was all bad for the New York Yankees this weekend, they did end up getting one win, and it was not against the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox did it to themselves. They end up trading their star slugger, Rafi Devers, to the San Francisco Giants. They end up getting some pitchers in return, righty Jordan Hicks, lefty Kyle Harrison, and a pair of prospects, an outfielder in James Tibbs III, who was the Giants' number 4 prospect at the time of the deal, and then one more righty pitcher. I think that's really a monster story heading out of the weekend, and it's really a big story for Yankees fans there. It's also a big story for Rays fans, Blue Jays fans, even the Baltimore Orioles in that division. They don't have to see Rafi Devers anymore. And Devers, who's been a Yankee killer year after year, game after game, when the Sox take on the Yankees. And he did so in Sunday's finale. He ends up finishing off his Boston career with a solo shot into the monster off of Max Fried. And sure enough, a couple hours later, Devers on the way to the West Coast, and this is just the second time of many times for the Boston Red Sox that they've traded away a star player. It's really the second one that stands out, the other one being Mookie Betts after the Red Sox won the 2018 World Series. Yes, of course, the Red Sox didn't win last year's World Series. However, Devers ends up being a monster piece of this Red Sox team, and it just makes zero sense at all that they would deal him. I know they had some trouble, him in the front office, about him not wanting to play first base, him wanting to play third base. They end up getting Alex Bregman in there, and that really changed things for him. They settled on having Devers as the DH for the season, and they were just done with him. I just don't, it does not make sense though, because most other teams, if they do have a problem with the player, they try to solve it, especially if it's a player that's as high profile and as good as Rafi Devers, one of the top 10 hitters in all of baseball, you would say, arguably one of the best as a left-handed hitter. He's maybe top 3 in all of baseball. And to deal him for what they did, they end up getting some pitching. And I know the Red Sox pitching has not been strong this year, and they end up getting a prospect as well. But this is a team that you come off a series sweep over the Yankees, your rival in the AL East, you're all of a sudden back in the division race, you're over 500, and now you decide to trade Rafi Devers, your best player and your all-star that you're going to really ride to the end and really ride for the next some odd years or so till he's about 33 years old. It just does not make sense from the Red Sox standpoint, and Red Sox Nation is very disappointed right now. And why wouldn't they be? They end up getting a star player in Rafi Devers that they could have for years and years and years into the future. They had the same thing with Mookie Betts when they traded him in 2018 and 2019. It just does not make sense from the Red Sox standpoint, and they end up saving a lot of money. However, are they all of a sudden going to spend that on a new free agent? And the question in the end is, how can you get any better in free agency than a guy like Rafi Devers, than have him locked down on a contract that you already had done and signed, sealed, delivered? It just doesn't make sense. And I understand the communication from the Red Sox standpoint towards Devers has not been really great. And Devers' side, he's really not been willing to do anything to help the Red Sox. However, the numbers on the field do not lie. This guy has been tearing it up in the month of May and into June. And the Red Sox really, I think they're going to feel the deficit of Rafi Devers out of that lineup. They do have some other guys. Bregman's coming back from injury. It's not Rafi Devers and the lefty power that he brings to the table. So that's going to be an interesting standpoint. But if you are a Yankees fan, there is that one positive that you could take away from the weekend. Open a cold one for yourself. It's going to be a real good time to watch the Yankees against the Red Sox and not deal with Rafi Devers on the other side, who's really been a Yankee killer year after year for Boston. So Boston ends up making some real big noise, and it's not from the win over the Yankees. It's the trade of Rafi Devers across the country to the West Coast and the San Francisco Giants. Let's finish things off today with the New York Knicks, as they have some news in their head coaching search. Of course, they fired head coach Tom Thibodeau after 5 seasons, just a couple days after their Eastern Conference Finals exit against the Indiana Pacers. They are now looking for their new head coach, and they've been rejected plenty of times, it seems, by other teams in terms of interview requests of their current head coaches of those teams. Ime Udoka of the Houston Rockets. You got Chris Finch of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you even have Jason Kidd of the Dallas Mavericks. So the top 3 right now that you're really looking at, Jason Kidd is still an option, not ruling it out just yet. That's according to SNY's Ian Begley. Still says the Knicks have a chance to get Jason Kidd and lure him to New York. It would probably involve a trade of some sort with the Mavericks. Yes, in today's NBA, you can trade for head coaches. So we'll see what happens if the Knicks have a deal that they could give to the Mavericks. But the Mavericks don't seem really content with giving up Jason Kidd right now. They have a lot of bright players for the future. They have some good veterans that they're really going to, all-star veterans in Klay Thompson. You have Anthony Davis. You also have Kyrie Irving. But they also have the number 1 pick now, and they have some young players that they could really go to, and that all starts with Cooper Flagg if he's selected number 1 overall by the Dallas Mavericks. That's going to be a big-time move for the Mavericks and a big-time franchise move for Dallas. I don't think it's all going to unravel when it comes to Jason Kidd as their head coach. So we'll see what happens with the Knicks and trying to get Jason Kidd. I just don't think that it's going to happen for them. They are planning to meet with a couple of former head coaches. Former Sacramento Kings head coach Mike Brown is going to interview in the next week, and they also are going to interview former Memphis Grizzlies coach Taylor Jenkins, who's going to come in for an interview. Those 2 guys, pretty strong candidates. I think when you look at Mike Brown and what he did with this Kings team, it's just a little bit different than what the Knicks really need right now. I don't think he's probably the best option. I know he's coached some high profile teams as an assistant coach for the Golden State Warriors through their championship runs, but as a head coach, the lead guy, I don't know if he's exactly what the Knicks need right now. On the other side, you got Taylor Jenkins, who has really pegged Memphis to some good seasons, but came in, I feel like, after Memphis really started to get rolling, as they had their guys already on the roster. I think that's the biggest thing for the Knicks looking at Taylor Jenkins. He had a good track record, and I'm not sure in the end why Memphis fired Taylor Jenkins just a season or two ago. It just didn't make sense. But the Knicks, really, you're having that look at Taylor Jenkins. I think he checks all the boxes. It could be a good move for the Knicks as their next head coach. But obviously, the Knicks' big story is who's going to be better than Tom Thibodeau? How are they going to best what Tom Thibodeau was able to do? That's going to be a very difficult task, making it 6 games into the Eastern Conference Finals. Not many coaches can come in and just completely take things from there and repeat exactly what the previous coach did. So we'll see what happens, but a lot of noise coming in last couple of days about those coaches that really declined the interview process, the interview requests, excuse me. And then you look at some of the names: Billy Donovan, Ime Udoka, Chris Finch, Quinn Snyder, the last couple to name a few. That's really where things stand right now. And that's going to be a big storyline heading into this next couple of weeks and the next stretch as the Knicks look for their next head coach in their franchise. So we'll see what happens. But the more noise coming out of Knicks land in the next couple of weeks, and they look to replace Tom Thibodeau after 5 seasons and a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals. But that will do it for episode 83 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamuth. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Thursday.